Is The Bad Guys 2 better than its predecessor? We have 5 categories to figure it out right now. The Bad Guys 2 is directed by Pierre Perifel, who also directed The Bad Guys Part 1, who before that was an important animation guy in a lot of other beautifully animated projects like All the Kung Fu Pandas, Monsters vs. Aliens, Shrek Forever After, and a bunch of other titles. So even though he was the director on these projects, you can bet he still had his hands all in the animation for The Bad Guys.
My turn.
In part 2, the bad guys are struggling to find trust and acceptance in their newly minted lives as good guys when they are pulled out of retirement and forced to do one last job by an all-female squad of criminals. That's per IMDb. So I'm gonna save some of how I feel about this section for overall execution and impact later. But in general, I found the direction and visuals much more to my taste than part 1. The tone in this sequel felt much more grounded. Well, as grounded as one can get in a world where humans elect anthropomorphic animals as government officials. But seriously, the tone was great. The pacing was better in that it felt like scenes could breathe a little more than they did in part 1, which allows us to connect to the characters' emotional journey and actually absorb and get into the story. We'll talk about visuals next, but I thought the blocking and staging were on point, which speaks directly to direction. Personally, I could have used even more of an adult tone, or maybe the word is mature tone, similar maybe to The Incredibles. Having talking animals, farts, and all the big set pieces, I think would keep kids invested regardless. So it's always nice if us adults can get into it too. And I think this film did that, but for my money, there could have been just a wee bit more. I'm giving a 4 out of 5 for direction and vision. So I'm not gonna spend a lot of time on visuals because, who are we kidding? We all know the visuals are stunning, impressively top notch. I'm not even sure what type of animation that's called, but it sort of has an attractive storybook aesthetic. And in large part, that's due to the cinematography, right? A lot of high quality composition and framing, moving of the camera, some exciting and big scale set pieces. They also mixed in some 2D animation in brief spurts, which was a nice effect. But in my opinion, what really stood out to me on why it looks as good as it does, of course, is in part due to the type of animation and, like I said, the framing and composition. But what really impresses me and makes this look so high quality is the lighting. Anyone involved in filmmaking usually knows this, but if you were ever wondering what makes a Hollywood film look like a Hollywood film, yes, no doubt, a good looking set, your framing, wardrobe, all that matters. But lighting is what really elevates your film to that, wow, this looks amazing echelon. I'm someone that hates overlighting, and I think The Bad Guys 2 was brilliant with their use of shadows and gradients of brightness in different scenes, which is actually a good illustration of how lighting affects tone. To me, the animation was too serious for part 1. And by serious, I mean it was too refined and polished for the silly pacing and execution of the first film. But it worked well for part 2. 5 of 5 for cinematography and visuals. So the writing, specifically the dialogue in this film, it was good. It wasn't overly profound or impressive, but it most certainly wasn't bad. I actually thought the comedy was a lot more clever than part 1. The timing of the fart jokes played a lot smoother this time around, in my opinion. And look, I know that fart jokes are inherently a little juvenile, and I'm okay with that. But in part 1, they just didn't land and felt a little too kid slapstick for me. They also did a good job building emotional tension. I could feel how desperate the bad guys were to stop Kitty. I could feel the emotional weight from multiple characters because of the different decisions or actions that would happen throughout the entire film. I also really enjoyed the themes of redemption and the impact of your past mistakes and integrity and trust. There was actually a fair bit more heart in this one to me than the first, especially with Kitty and her storyline. I do wish they would have explored that a little deeper or at least illustrated that a little bit more. And that's why I can't give this section a 5 rating. As good and improved as the execution of the writing and storytelling was, it still didn't quite get me to emote the way some animated films have. For instance, it didn't quite have the emotional weight of The Lion King or Toy Story 3. The Bad Guys 2 does have some heart and may be more relatable than either of those two films that I just mentioned, but it doesn't resonate as much in my opinion. 4 or 5 for writing and storytelling. Real quick, before we get to the last 2 categories, please subscribe if you're enjoying this review. You don't even have to leave the video. There's a little channel icon you can hit right down here or somewhere down here, and voila. Thank you. Now, back to the review. The Bad Guys 2 has a very strong cast, starring Sam Rockwell, Awkwafina, Craig Robinson, Mark Maron, Anthony Ramos, who was probably my second favorite voice talent in this picture. Then there's Zazie Beetz and Maria Bakalova, who's another one of my favorites as Pigtail Petrova. Although she didn't have a lot of lines, they were mostly one-liners, but they were funny and she delivered. Next, there's Natasha Lyonne, who voiced Doom the bird. Doom was a cool character, especially stylistically, but I wasn't sure I loved her voice at first. It just felt a little too, hey, you handsome, what do you say you buy a lady a drink and we get out of here and go back to your place? That was a probably terrible impression of a caricature of a woman at a bar in the roaring 20s, but you get it. There's also Richard Ayoade, who's perfect as Professor Marmalade, Alex Borstein, whose character I did not like at all in part 1, but was actually tolerable and a bigger part of the film's heartbeat this time around. And then there was Danielle Brooks, who, let me tell you, she brought her hard hat and lunch pail with her to that voice booth. Danielle Brooks was amazing as Kitty, and in my opinion, she hands down stole the show in this film. Danielle showed a lot of skill in her voice control, and she brought a lot of nuance in her delivery. I could totally hear her emotional investment in this role. She's easily my favorite in this film. However, even with all the praise I'm giving the voice talent in this section, which it deserves, I can't in good conscience give it a 5. And the reason is simple. While very good, I didn't leave the theater with a lasting impression ringing in my mind. What do I mean by that? Well, let's compare it to Lion King again, another film with a great voice cast. But the difference is when you left Lion King, if you saw it in theaters like I did, or when you finished Lion King at home, you can immediately start quoting lines from the film. And I know that's partially due to good writing, but the voice actors in that film are what brought the writing to life in such a memorable way. Think of how memorable Mufasa is, Zazu, Scar, Timon and Pumbaa, young Simba, the hyenas, Rafiki. The Bad Guys 2 is good, but not quite on that level. 4 or 5 for performance and characters. So which is better, part 2 or part 1? By now, I'm sure you've guessed, I think it's by far and away part 2. As a matter of fact, I didn't care for part 1 very much at all, at least until about halfway through the film. Obviously, the animation was still amazing and the voice work was good, but the tone was a little too wacky for what I was expecting, especially Misty Luggins. She was just, man, too over the top for me in part 1. And the bad guy story in part 1 was compelling, but the full storyline and the pace and the guinea pigs.
Somebody get the license plate number. I have just been violated.
I don't know. It just felt a little too kiddish at times. Almost toddlerish, dare I say. Now, the impact in the box office isn't terrible. Apparently, the movie had an estimated $80 million budget, and as the making of this video, which is almost a week after its release, it's made $53 million. I'm sure all of these other big films like the Fantastic Four, Superman, Jurassic World Rebirth, and by the time this video comes out, Freakier Friday and Weapons will slice into the profits a little, but I'm pretty sure it'll make its money back and then some when it's all said and done. That being said, the impact on me from viewing it at the theaters and for the execution of the film, I'm giving it a strong 4 out of 5. All in all, The Bad Guys 2 adds up to a healthy legal score of 21, which just gets it into my highest, most coveted ranking, A Good Time at the Movies. Please subscribe if you enjoyed this video. It would mean a lot to me and the growth of this channel. And don't forget to check out my movie phone videos every first and third Tuesday and get a fun, different take on movie reviews, new and old. Did you see The Bad Guys 2? Was I too generous with my ranking? Share your thoughts in the comments. Thanks for watching. Laters.